We're here at the optionistics.com open house. I'm joined the sellers here, Richard, and Richard, help me out with your last name.
DeSimone.
So to pronounce DeSimone. Okay. And I'm sorry, Richard. I've called you both Rich and Richard. Which one would you prefer as we continue?
Richard is fine. Richard.
Okay. Richard, thank you again for joining us. Everyone listening, I am the broker for this site. What you can do, a little housekeeping at first. If you haven't already done so, please dial into the audio. You can use the phone number that's provided, or of course the mic and the speakers that are automatically, for most people, the default setting. If you'd like to ask questions during the webinar, you can do so. It's by the chat function within the GoToMeeting. Type the question in. I will definitely ask the question. It may not be right then. If I know that topic or that theme is going to be covered later, we're going to handle it then, just to have a cleaner presentation. And I'll ask for last questions at the very end. People are going to be listening to this obviously live now. Welcome. People listening to it as a recording. People listening to it live. The recording of this open house will be available on Latona's no later than 24 hours from now. Without further ado, what everyone is looking at right now is the breakdown, if you will, as far as what's presented on the Latona's listing page. What you can do once you log into your account within the hyperlinks here, the blue links, you can click on it and get the monthly breakdown of revenue. This actually is the past trailing 12 months, and Richard will be getting me over March data as it's available. So this actually is displaying March 2014 through February 2015. Obviously, March just wrapped up. You're also, and this is a little off topic, but within the listing page, you'll be able to request a prospectus, understand, and it'll be expressed to you that you need to have an NDA signed on file in order for me to send that to you, but I can definitely email that over to you upon request. What we're dealing with is an aged financial site. Richard, there's going to be two portions of the presentation where you're going to be doing the vast majority of the speaking. That's during the history, which is next, and then also during the admin. And the admin, Richard, are the handful of slides you sent us over as far as really the operations of the site. You're going to notice a slight delay when you're done talking and when I start talking, because I'm going to put myself on mute so there's no ambient noise. But realize that I'm here and it's natural. There's going to be a little bit of a delay there. But if you would, and kind of the Reader's Digest version, but obviously whatever you feel is relevant, please include. We're looking at a relatively aged site here of over 8 years. What would that be? Actually, over 9 years now. Why don't you tell us about the beginning of the site, how it came about, and whatever you think is relevant as I fast forward here to the history of the site. Please take it away.
Okay. The site was started back in 2004. I started developing the site. I was working as a contractor at TD Ameritrade, and I was working on the routers to the Chicago Board of Options Exchange that routed the customers' option orders. And at the time, I had been working with the business development area in TD Ameritrade, and they had made recommendations to me about the potential of having a site that could be used for indirect marketing to sell brokerage products. And with that, I started to build Optionistics. And I did this as a part-time endeavor way back in 2004, and I was actually started to build this site on a laptop as I was going back and forth to work. It took me about 2 years. In 2006, roughly March 2006, I got my very first subscriber. Very exciting day for me. And at that point, I was very excited. I started investing a lot of time and effort in developing the site, building out more of the option products that you'll see listed in the left-hand margin. My subscription base grew very steadily from 2006 up until around 2009, 2010, where it started to flatten out, and I've had a very steady user base for the last 5 years. This site is really a way of commoditizing standard analytics that are used by option traders, and it really is intended to be a low-cost version for option traders who don't have access to this data through their usually discount broker. It appeals to a large base of retirees and to some degree young people who are academics. As I said, the site is very stable. It has very minimal maintenance, and all of the kinks have been honed over the years. I have cut back on how much time I've invested because I've invested my time somewhere else, and I think that this site really has a lot of potential if someone is willing to bring it up to date with some of the more recent products, for example, weekly options and binary options. I get a lot of requests for that, and I think that there's still a very, very vast future for this site, especially if it gets expanded to stocks. And as I said, I'm working on another venture which is much more time consuming.
Okay, good stuff. And as you indicated, actually, some sort of manifestation of opportunistic is visible way back to 2001 in the Wayback Machine. I believe you said 2004 is really when you started doing it, but that bears out here. This is the archive site that
I don't have any knowledge of anything prior to 2006. I actually originally registered this website under the domain optionstoolbox.com, and because the CBOE already had a product called Options Toolbox, I then went on and trademarked the name Optionistics and changed the site name. But I don't know anything about what you see on the way back prior to 2007.
No problem. No problem. Okay. What everybody's looking at right now is the last 12 months of very stable traffic. The dips, I would imagine, Richard, are possibly weekends, but this is the last 12 months of the analytics for the site. I mean, what's jumping out on me is obviously a consistency here. Can you tell me, and we'll get to it on the next page, but how do you get traffic to the site, or how is most of your traffic coming?
Originally, I paid for AdWords and also was actively participating in a lot of the option forums and dropping a link to the site occasionally. I did that for years. Recently, I have done nothing as far as marketing the site. And surprisingly, the site it's stable, slightly growing. So the answer is I don't really do much. It's all organic search.
That's great. That's good stuff. And really what we're going to be looking at here is the vast majority of the traffic is coming from a preferable country, the U.S., Canada, India, Australia, UK. These are all the things you're wanting to see, mostly in most circumstances. So an overriding majority comes directly from the U.S. And direct traffic, direct type-in traffic is the majority of the type of traffic the site gets. I do notice I see a question as far as social media. Any delving within that you had done or currently doing or are planning to do?
I at one point opened a Twitter account. I think I might have posted 1 or 2 posts and then just didn't do anything with that. There is no Facebook presence for this. So the answer is there's been practically no social media here.
Okay, great. Room to grow. That's good stuff. It says in the listing, and I mean, this is from memory, and I can definitely pull it, but there was, through the life of the site, wasn't there like 12,865 subscribers in that range? How many active subscribers do you have right now? How often do you email them? This is something that...
there's a distinction between registered users who do not pay and
right.
subscribers who do pay. There are almost 13,000 registered users. Of those, currently, right around 200 people are paying, and there are four types of subscriptions. There are monthly subscriptions and annual subscriptions, and those can be broken down into standard subscriptions, which do not include the ability to download data, and the standard subscription plus data. And the breakdown there is about 40% are annual, 60% are monthly, and about 40% are data and 60% are standard subscribers.
Okay, very good. And as we get down the road with a specific individual, we can provide some more documentation to that. But thank you for clarifying that. As far as where the traffic's coming from, as far as specific sites, I mean, really what we're looking at is people obviously going to Google and then typing in, search terms that bring them to optionistic. So it's something that's very relevant as it comes to search. The overriding, as mentioned, where you get traffic is through direct right here, but you are getting a lot of interest deriving directly from Google, which is good. Options calculator. These are keywords that someone can find your site through. You said if I'm not mistaken, how recently or how long ago was it? When were you buying keywords?
At least 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe.
All right. So there's not going to really be much or any residual there. Backlinking, you do have a fair amount. Have you ever? And I see a question coming in. Have you ever spent money, or have you ever done link exchanges? Anything really proactive about linking, or is this just naturally occurring?
Not done anything proactively. The only thing that I have done that might be considered a link back is if I would have posted something on a forum with a link back to the site. But I have not solicited any other website owners, if that's what you're asking. No. The answer is no.
Yeah, the former, the explanation as far as posting link on a forum is definitely not viewed as anything other than what everybody or any logical person would do. But right, the fact that you haven't done anything but that means the answer, as you said, is no. You haven't really done anything on it. These are just the composition of the links. This would be more relevant, of course, if you did have an active link exchange, if you were purchasing. What we can look at here in this slide is what you are linking to. So I'm by no means, other than some mutual funds and some IRAs, I'm not a financial person, and Antonius, I'll get your question that just came in. I'm not as savvy as, and I don't recognize some of these sites. Can you tell us what stockmap.com is? Steady Options, are these industry leaders? What are you linking to when you see these?
I don't link out to these sites. Are they linking into me?
Correct, yes. So who are these? I'm just trying to show how relevant these sites are. Have you heard of them? Are you familiar with these sites?
No, I'm familiar with Wikipedia. Rocket Chart. These are usually, I don't know these sites specifically, but in general, the people that link back to me without my solicitation are usually bloggers that blog about stock options, and generally they will include a chart or a reference to the site. Usually they're talking about a stock or a trade of some kind, and they'll link back to my site to show a chart. But I have not investigated these specific links that you're showing here.
Fair enough. I do have a question. I'll ask it verbatim, and this is something going back to the subscriber. What is the average length of a monthly subscriber? Meaning, how long do they stay?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would say that annuals generally renew at around 30% rate. About 1/3 of the annuals renew. Monthlies, I don't know. I'm guessing off the top of my head, and don't quote me on there. Don't hold me to this. I would say the typical monthly subscriber is 5 or 6 months at least, and sometimes I have some monthlies that have been there for years, and they should have converted to annual.
To a year. Yeah, they convert to a year, so that is kind of a question that's hard to give a percentage to. But Antonius, keep the questions coming. I see you're getting pretty active here. But right, hopefully that answers. If you want some further explanation on that, please let us know. Richard, what we're looking at right now and what anyone can pull up is SEMrush, which gives a very stable profile as far as what the traffic, if someone were to try to gain all the natural traffic you have coming to the site, what they can expect to pay for it. The relevance here I see is just it's remarkably stable. So there's no annual peaks and valleys, if you will, or monthly peaks and valleys. So with the stability, someone can really action upon that. And I'm looking for anything else. No, just really good stuff there. In looking at just, again, certain organic keywords, you're ranking for calculator, options profit calculator, covered call screener, which I'm sure is an industry term, options calculator, first page on that. So the fact that you're not buying any of these is pretty impressive. Traffic. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot because you may not know right now, and it's something that everyone listening live recording will have March data as soon as it's available. Richard, do you know right now if is March still trending up as has been the tendency since December? Do you have those stats yet?
I do. I have I can look them up actually while you're here. I just looked at the numbers. The site grossed in subscriptions in March $6,992 and $390 in AdSense revenue.
Okay.
If I look at analytics for traffic, I haven't done that. I can do that while you're waiting if you want to hold on.
And I will, but I can also pull, and we can fast forward to, but that seems pretty consistent revenue-wise with what I know the site's around $7,000 a month. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that screen. I'll advance here if you can do that because we're getting to the page views as well. So what I'll notice and what I'll talk about as you're doing that is, understandably the number sizes here are different. We're talking about tens of thousands here. We're talking about 100 to 200,000 within that range. So it doesn't look as dramatic, but it does show that from December moving into 2015, obviously the uniques went up, as did obviously the page views went up. Why would that be? I mean, why at the beginning? Is that people planning investments at the beginning of the year, or why this huge spike in September?
I see a tendency for people to subscribe when the market is going up.
Okay.
Or when there's extreme volatility in the market. But during low periods, usually the summer, when the market is generally inactive, then things generally are quieter.
That makes sense.
I didn't think of that. Sense. I can give you the numbers for March. I have them in front of me for
if you would.
For traffic for March. 26,156 sessions, 17,000 users, 124,000 page views.
Okay, everything's up. That's great. So right, and reasonably significantly. That's good. So traffic is increasing.
March was in a month, yes.
Excellent. Okay, and I appreciate that. I'll send you an email, Richard, after the call for, so I can go ahead and key it into the back end there as far as updating March's data. Now this is the aforementioned, and I believe there's about 5 of them where you sent us these screens, talking points, if you will. If you would, and I know we have a screen as far as day-to-day operations, but go into, you mentioned site is highly automated, go into, if you would, Richard, what the site's built on, and what you do during the day and what is needed in the back end behind the scenes. And then when you're done talking about a specific slide, all you have to do is say next, and I'll go ahead and hit next. What I'll do is, again, I'm going to mute myself. We'll get to the revenue screenshot, and then I'll unmute myself and we can talk about revenue. So please take it away.
Okay, the site is very, very stable. It requires very little interaction. As you can see by this slide, in the last month, I had 17 actionable inquiries. Now, there is a lot of mail generated by the site, so there's probably a every time somebody subscribes, there'll be 3 emails from PayPal, and there'll be credit card acknowledgments, about credit cards expiring. So there is a lot of mail. I'm not going to suggest that there isn't. Probably a few hundred emails every month, but how many of them actually require action are very, very small. And for the most part, it's people who are thinking about registering or subscribing, and they want clarification about certain features. What time is the data available? Can they get a sample download? Do I cover such and such a stock or an option? How far back does the data go? These are the typical kinds of questions that I'll be getting. And most of those questions are answered on the site, and most people who ask questions really could have answered them on their own. But some people who are about to spend money usually want a warm feeling that somebody's on the other end of their inquiry, and I am very prompt about responding to any inquiries for that reason. Every once in a while, somebody will ask me to cancel the subscription, even though it's automated for them and they can do it without intervention. They'll ask anyway. Sometimes people will upgrade or downgrade their subscription from data plan to non-data plan or from monthly to annual, and that requires a manual intervention to adjust their account. Currently, I use authorize.net as the gateway for credit card processing and PayPal also, and there are interfaces that are built into those particular services that I use to administer the site. I don't have any administrative pages built into the site, and over these years I've never really needed them. So that part is really simplistic. Next, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, this is basically reiterating what I said earlier. The majority of support tests are related to sales inquiries and adjustments to accounts. There have been, the data feeds are very, very stable. I have not seen any problem with the data feeds in years. And when I do see problems, the only problem that I typically see is that the feed will be late. And that might mean that a job might have to be rerun. And if my memory serves me correctly, I haven't had to rerun a job in about 18 or 19 months. And rerunning a job is literally logging in and typing a command on the command prompt and hitting enter, and that's it. So the system is very, very, all of the issues that have occurred in the first few years have all been ironed out, and the system is very, very automated. Next. The site is hosted on Amazon Web Services. It can be turned over to a buyer very simply by creating an image, and a user will then simply open a web services account and fire up an instance, and they'll be up in under an hour, no problem. All of the maintenance tasks that purge old data, inactive stocks, those jobs are all automated, including jobs that run out and query Amazon Web Services for snapshots, so the data is constantly backed up, and all of that requires no intervention. There's a newsletter that goes out that users can opt into. I do pay for a separate mail relay service to forward those mails. That, again, is highly automated. Once every 6 or 7 months, somebody might ask for me to remove them from the site, even though there's a nice link in the bottom of the email. So there's another maintenance task, but very, very infrequent. When some adjustment is required to a user account, again, there's no administrative interface through the web. Everything is done by simply updating the database. So anybody who's going to maintain the site needs to have a familiarity with SQL, it's SQL. If you're energetic and you want to build an administrative interface for these features, I see that as a very reasonable task for someone to do, especially if you have support staff that isn't as technical. It might be very reasonable to spend a few days or a week or two, whatever it takes, to build an administrative interface if that turns out to be financially viable for whoever might buy this site. The site is written on Amazon Web Service instance of Linux, which is really CentOS. So if you're specific about your version of Linux, then basically you're looking at a Red Hat variant or CentOS. And they're the skills that would be required for maintenance. Next. This is just a sample of the user table, and it shows, I know it's hard to read, I kind of squeezed a lot in there, but these show the relevant fields that would be modified by someone who would be maintaining the site. And essentially, the things that are changed are adjustments to subscription length, changing the expiration date on somebody's subscription, changing their rights from a data user to a standard user or vice versa, adjusting, whether they get the hot sheet email to them, which is the daily email that's automated, but you can turn that on and off by changing one of the fields in the database. You can also see when a user subscribed, how long they've been a subscriber, whether they subscribe via PayPal or from a credit card. There's also a forum on the site, which is really not a significant part of the site, but it is available there. And it is moderated by somebody other than myself. And you can basically adjust somebody's screen name or password for the bulletin board if they want. Usually, the way it sets up by default is they get logged into the forum when they log into the site. I've never had to adjust this for anybody, but I'm just pointing out that it's there. The last field that you can see on this is the credit card expiration warning, and this is important because this is a nice thing that somebody could pick up on. I never took the time to actually automate an email to go out to a user when their credit card is about ready to expire. And there's an opportunity to keep users longer if you can prompt them to update the credit card information.
And Richard, if I could interrupt here, there's a question that came in during this. I'll read it verbatim just to make sure. He mentioned SQL, but I don't believe that creates the pages. The question obviously being what the site's built on. I don't know enough about that to answer that, but can you answer that?
Yes. There's no off-the-shelf content management. This is not built in WordPress. At one point, when I was very early on, I started using Joomla. But quickly, at the time, in 2004, that product was very immature. So I got rid of all that. All of this is written in Perl. Got to go back. This was written in 2004. So to update content, basically it's all template driven. So a user would bring up an editor of their choice. I use Emacs. You could use VI. There is actually a little tool also that will let you edit a document online. It's very rudimentary, but these sites were built using an editor from the command line. And you can choose any editor you want. Or you could, at this point, it might make a lot of sense to build a WordPress shell and then use Ajax to query the backend to prompt for the, to show the analytics and the reports. Again, that's a design decision that somebody else would have to make. Right now, to update content, you need an editor and you need to edit the templates.
Okay, that definitely answers it, and I appreciate it. This is, and I've seen what you've done. There's going to be some slides at the end that we're addressing now, and that's great. You already went into the daily maintenance of the site. Before we end that one, and because it goes on the same slide, why don't you spend a moment, your skill set, because an hour of your time is going to be worth more than an hour of my time with everything that's having to do with financial matters. But why don't you discuss, you mentioned in a previous life, if you will, what you did, and now you're doing something else. But can you tell us what your resume is, so to speak, and then go into, as far as site growth, what you would do with the site should you keep it?
Well, my background, surprisingly enough, I was in the military for a lot of years, and when I got out, I worked in the Department of Defense, and I worked on real-time flight controls and flight systems for military aircraft and weapon systems. And that was back in the 80s, and it didn't pay, so I jumped ship from the DoD and moved on to Wall Street. I had a series of jobs as contract. I was a contract developer, and I worked for some of the larger firms like Susquehanna Investment Group, Morgan Stanley, ADP, who did front office clearing. I worked for TD Ameritrade, Bank of America. I basically hopped around to the major players. I worked at Lehman Brothers 3 times. I was at Lehman Brothers on 9/11. I worked at the major financial houses in Manhattan for years. And I started the site mostly because my boss at the time asked me to learn a new language. I mean, if you imagine Perl being new, you can put everything in the right perspective as far as time frame. This thing started as an endeavor to learn programming language and also to meet a sales need. So my background is basically real-time, high-speed programming and finances. Actually, it started with defense and weapons, and then it went to financial. And now I'm getting ready to retire, so I'm near the end of my days here. As far as what can be done for the site, to me, just looking at the market and looking at the competitors in the space and looking at the size of the space and looking at the value of the traffic in the space, I can see that the short-term objective here, or short-term things that can be done in just a few months, are to basically retool the approach, the appeal of the main page, the site, to basically change the target audience a little bit to emphasize plain stocks a little bit more. I mean, this is an option site. It's a site for option traders, but the market for stock traders is 30 or 40 times larger than just pure option traders. So I think that you could expand the audience quite significantly if you can somehow expand the appeal of the site not to be so directed on options. You know, still make that the core of the site, but just make more offerings for stock-only traders. And so that's one thing I think is a big particular change that can be made. Another thing is there are some new products that have come out, mini options, weekly options, and to some degree binary options, which all of those things are supported on the site. All of the logic is there, all the data is there. It's just they're not presented overtly enough to attract attention to people. Weekly options in particular are very popular now. And I think that I do get questions from people who say, do you cover weekly options? And I have to explain to them how to get to that data. The data is there. It just needs to be presented in a little more straightforward manner so people don't have to dig for it. Other things that can be done very quickly is add a free trial. I get a inquiry about, do I have a free trial, about once or twice a month. It's a pretty common inquiry. Another thing that I don't do is, if somebody's credit card is expiring, I don't follow up and prompt them and say, please update your credit card information, and those subscriptions generally fall off. And I think that if someone were proactively, keeping up with people whose credit cards were expiring, that might add another 10% of revenue, maybe 5 to 10%. I don't know the exact number, but it would be a quick win. It would be a small amount of labor for a nice little return there. Another thing that people have always asked me for over the years is to add real-time data, or at least intraday data. Right now, this site is only end-of-day data. Now, I can't predict the future, but I would think that if you were to implement real-time data, the subscription base would go up. I think it would probably more than double. But the cost of real-time data, not only on the monthly cost for the feed, but the amount of effort that would go into revamping the site to support intraday data and real-time data is significant. I think it might warrant, I won't say a rewrite, but it would warrant significant changes to the back end. On the other hand, it could really change the size of the site by an order of magnitude. So, it's just it becomes a different product at that point. You'd have to charge more. It would cost more, but I think that the user base would grow significantly. There's a very comprehensive data feed for dividends. In fact, there are multiple feeds for dividends that get consolidated. And for those people who are familiar with options, to compute the analytics, to compute volatility on an option requires that the forward dividends be known. So this site has dividend feeds that come into it, and all those dividends are tracked and stored, and there's historical dividend information that goes back for many years. And that is not made directly available to the end user. That information is not presented as a feature, but there are other websites on the web that do nothing but dividends. And this site has dividends, it has all the data required, and it wouldn't take too much effort to make dividends a separate offering. And that in and of itself might warrant an entire new website. But adding it here would certainly make the offering much more attractive for the price point, because you would be able to get options and dividends for the same price that other sites are just selling dividend data, and that data is already in the site. So I think that's a really good opportunity there, again, to expand the user base. Might even be a good basis for, adding a premium feature. Take optionistics plus dividend data and add another $10 or $15 a month. I just never got around to doing it. Next.
That's very comprehensive. I appreciate it. Revenue, and as you mentioned, the revenue was right at 7,000 in March, which jives with there being an improvement in traffic as well. But I believe you said it was right at 7,000. Right at 7,000.
$1,992.
Okay, great. And we also went into the volatility of the market. So I'm looking here. I'm seeing higher revenue in July, albeit that's a summer month. But you're saying year after year, summer months, and I know this, because I watch the news, but I know summer months are slower, traditionally slower in the market.
You see a lag here. The actual revenue gets collected and put into my system a month after it actually is earned, sometimes up to 6 weeks after it's earned. So if you see a peak in July, that was really May or June.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense then. Okay, I appreciate it. That's more into the early summer. Okay, good. Cost of goods sold, and I know that you have you have a pretty extensive, or your profit and loss statement express COGS. Can you, and this is a magnitude of $100, $200 or so, let us know what COGS, what are you identifying as cost of goods sold? Is that the merchant account?
They're finance charges mostly.
Right.
Fees from PayPal, fees from the credit card, also the gateway fees for the merchant accounts. They tend to be 35. The base fee for the merchant account fee is around $36 and change per month, and the PayPal is based on sales, and there's also a gateway fee again based on sales. So they usually add up to around $200.
Okay, all right. So that's worth mentioning and also worth describing. The expense here, is this a once-a-year hosting charge?
That's the mail relay fee. Mail relay
fee,
$50 once a year. The other fees are data fees, the dividend fees, and option fee and stock fees. All are roughly, $40 to $60 a month, depending on who the vendor is, and all told, that's about $200.
Fair enough. And more will be discussed when someone signs an NDA and has a prospectus, but thank you for clarifying that. Look, and this is what I was indicating, you really addressed this already in slides that you provided here previously. So do you want to add to anything when you're looking at this site or when you're looking at this slide? I know we addressed it, but would you care to add anything as you read that?
No, I think I did cover this pretty well. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, and questions are still being accepted. There'll actually be a slide here, which will do a last call for questions. You also provided 5 to 7 bullet points relating to what you would do and what you could see would grow the site. Anything you care to add on this one?
There's one more thing. I had met with the CEO of Trade Year Brokerage, and he's suggesting that I add the ability to trade on the site. Now, I had investigated this way back, and there's another opportunity here to allow people to open brokerage account directly from the site and essentially be an affiliate for brokerages. So you could put a link to sign up on TD Ameritrade or Trade Year or Options House, and you could also make additional money through an affiliate if someone who visited your site clicked on that link and signed up for a brokerage account somewhere. And those CPAs can be in the $300 to $400 range per sign up. So I wouldn't expect many of them, but again, the amount of effort it would take to put a link to a brokerage would be very minimal, and the potential payout could be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per year for a minimal amount of effort.
Okay, great suggestion there. You mentioned you have a much bigger project you're working on now. Retirement's around the corner, but does that answer the question? I guess why are you selling?
I'm selling because I don't have the time I'm working on another project, and I'm actually cutting back on everything that I do now, and getting ready to move to Florida. So.
Understood. Last call for questions. Richard, you've done a great job, and a lot of this is proactive, especially with the your skill set and what it takes to run the site, as well as what you would do to move the site forward. So last call for questions here, and as people may be sending them in, this is my contact information that's available on Latona's. You'll see my cell phone, my email, my Skype. Definitely leave a voicemail. I'll call you back if I don't answer. Invite me to Skype. I accept everyone who invites. As mentioned, if you want a prospectus, request that off the listing, and I'll make sure you have a signed NDA in-house. Everyone listening to this live, a recording of this will be on Latona's within 24 hours. Obviously, if you're listening to the recording, reach out to me. Here's my contact information. I'd love to talk to you about the site. Richard, great job. Thank you very much for your time. I will be in touch, and I'll send you an email just to send me March data when we get off the phone here. But thank you very much for your time. It went very well.
Thank you.
Take care.